I've been a Democrat my whole life, and I heard all of the descriptions of MAGA during the 2016 election, and I bought into a lot of them. And then one day I heard Hillary Clinton criticize Tulsi Gabbard for being a communist, a Russian plant. Tulsi Gabbard, who put her life on the line again and again for this country in military service, something that Hillary Clinton never did. And I began to have doubts about what I was being told about MAGA. And when President Trump got elected, I said 80 million people voted for him. How can we dismiss 80 million of our fellow Americans as deplorables? Oh, I don't want to work in Washington, D.C. I have a good job. I have a great life. But I want to help these kids so that we can end the chronic disease epidemic. And I went to President Trump, and I said to President Trump, if you want my help, I am here to do it. And we worked together for a while. But I started to understand that MAGA, for most Democrats, MAGA, Make America Great Again, means going back to the 1950s. And they say it's racist because we didn't have civil rights in our country at that time for Black Americans. They say it's dictatorial and it's against freedom of speech because that was the era of Joe McCarthy. And they say it's isolationist and retrograde. But the more that I get to know you and the more that I get to know Donald Trump, I understand what MAGA really means. And I asked Donald Trump about what he thought MAGA meant, what era we were going to make America great again. And he said, the era of your uncle, John F. Kennedy. And that was the era when America was at its apex, here and abroad. We were the wealthiest country in the world. We owned half the wealth on the face of the earth. The American middle class was the greatest economic engine in the history of mankind. We had a robust union movement that was making sure that American labor had dignity and good jobs. We had virtually every American believed in the accessibility of the American dream, which meant at that time that if you worked hard, if you played by the rules, you could afford to buy a home. You could take a summer vacation. You could raise a family, and you could put something aside for your retirement on a single job. There's no American now in my kids' generation, sorry, my duck is calling. There's no American now in my kids' generation who believes that that contract applies to them. This is a demoralized generation. In 2013, there was a poll in which Americans under 35 were asked, are you proud of the United States of America? And 85% of them said yes. The same poll taken 6 months ago, only 17% said yes. We have an entire generation that is alienated, that is disaffected, that has lost faith, hope for their own futures, and has lost their pride in our country. And to me, that was one of the most tragic data points that I learned about in this election. We have kids, the greatest asset that I had as a boy was this intense pride that I had about the United States of America. And we were, at that time, a moral authority around the world. The people all around the world wanted to be in America. They looked to us for leadership. They knew the difference between leadership and bullying. They didn't want us making wars. My uncle was asked by one of his best friends, what do you want on your gravestone? And he said he kept the peace. He said the primary job of a president of the United States is to keep our country out of war. He said that he didn't want African children and Latin American children and Asian children, when they heard about the United States of America, to think of a man with a gun. He wanted them to think of a Peace Corps volunteer. He wanted them to think of the Kennedy Milk Program, which gave nutrition to tens of millions of hungry children around the world. He wanted them to think of USAID and the Alliance for Progress that put America on the side of the poor, not just in this country, but all around the world. And those are the same ambitions that Donald Trump has. Today, my uncle kept any American soldier during his term in office from ever going to die in combat. Today, as a result of that commitment, there are more statues to John Kennedy, more boulevards named after him, more avenues, more universities, more hospitals in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and any other US president, and probably more than all other presidents combined. And that is a good foreign policy, to have the world love us. Don't you want a foreign policy where the rest of the world loves and admires the United States of America?